Thank you. In the words of the Mayor of New York, this afternoon's events represented the nightmare Americans have given much thought to, but one they hope would never become a reality. Today, it did, and the ghastly, the horrible, and the unthinkable shattered the pulse of ordinary life. Today's scenes of incalculable devastation will be forever etched in the memories of Americans, almost in the way that earlier generations remembered Pearl Harbor. The first targets were the twin towers of the World Trade Center, those shining monuments on the Manhattan landscape, not only to American business and know-how, but to international, global trade relations. The twin towers were brought crashing to the ground, almost certainly with an unconscionable loss of life. The skyline for hundreds of movies and for all those symbols of American preeminence, reduced now to broken stumps on the darkest day in modern American history. And if Americans never forget these images, then they are not alone. These are pictures none of us will ever forget. And that's the end of this special program. ITV News is back on the air at midnight with extended coverage of the attacks in the United States. But now from all of us here, goodbye.
Now, London Tonight with Lucy Alexander.
Good evening. We start with the capital's reaction to the catastrophic events that have rocked the United States. Within minutes of the attacks, a massive security operation swung into action here in London. Tonight, the city, the US Embassy and Gatwick and Heathrow airports are on full alert. In a moment, we'll cross live to Heathrow for the latest on the travel chaos there. First, Simon Harris has this report.
America's embassy in Grosvenor Square was tonight turning into a memorial for the dead of Manhattan. Among the first to lay flowers, Londoner Nadia Lee. Overwhelmed by what had happened, she travelled from her home in Pimlico.
Now, how many people have lost loved ones in that building that they haven't spoken to for months or had argued with? And it's even worse when something like that happens.
Security at the embassy was tighter than ever in a day which has seen many buildings in the capital look at their protection. In London's tallest tower, there was no panic, but as the reality of what happened in America sank in, many of Canary Wharf's workers decided to play safe. As they headed home, a glance backwards and upwards could only draw inevitable comparisons. In the city, the stock exchange was evacuated for a while. City workers crowded into bars to watch uninterrupted television news coverage of the unfolding disaster, many trying desperately to phone friends and colleagues in New York.
Is going to have repercussions over here and in America for months to come.
Everybody here knows people who work in the States, who work in New York, so obviously, everybody's upset and worried about them.
It's horrific. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime.
So close are the links between financial institutions in the city and those in America, most will consider themselves possible targets in this terrorist campaign. Tonight, the Foreign Secretary, Jack Straw, confirmed that all government buildings in London, civilian and military, are on a high state of alert. The impact on the city's financial business is impossible to gauge at this moment. The impact on London as a whole might not be as severe as first feared.
My message to Londoners would be, we have taken all the precautions that we need. Let's hope that business can be as normal tomorrow and that we can actually get on with business. London has been used to terrorist attacks and is not cowed by them.
At the American Church in Tottenham Court Road, staff expect many US citizens in London to be shocked and scared.
Phone lines are down, and especially a lot of our members here even have husbands and fathers who are traveling back and forth to New York, and I'm sure of just tremendous concern and despair over what may be happening to loved ones.
Many American tourists in London were out sightseeing when they learnt the news.
I'm going from total disbelief to just shock and horror, and I just can't imagine what those people in New York are going through.
Ken Livingstone, who visited the World Trade Center in January, sent a message of condolence to New York's Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He said what New York was feeling had been brought home to him personally. Tonight, the capital's most high-profile tourist attraction, the London Eye, was at a standstill. It was one more security alert in a day which has brought both a sense of shock at what happened across the Atlantic and a reawakening of fears about terrorist attacks. This is Simon Harris for London Tonight.
And there's chaos at London airports this evening. All flights in and out of America have been cancelled until further notice, and the knock-on effects are being felt at Heathrow and Gatwick. Our reporter Matt Gardner is at Heathrow now. Matt, what's the latest there for stranded passengers?
Well, Lucy, I can tell you that the Piccadilly line has been extended. Its service has been extended past midnight to get passengers back into central London. There's also an extra bus service from Hammersmith to Liverpool Street to help with that overload of passengers as well. This evening, I spoke to passengers left stuck here at Heathrow Airport.
Heathrow Airport is now on a high security alert. Airlines are already insisting that this disruption will last for the next 2 days at the very least. Flight information screens revealed the day's events. British Airways recalled 21 flights already over the Atlantic.
Well, they didn't tell us anything at first, just that the flight had to be rerouted back to London, and we didn't know what was going on. So we knew it was something major, but we didn't know what.
Really scary. We were on our way to Washington and they didn't tell us anything on the flight, and we turned around after 4 or 5 hours and they wouldn't tell us anything before we landed here in London, what was going on, and still not too much information. It's really scary.
There are still thousands of passengers here at Heathrow left stranded. The Prime Minister has announced this evening that all flights over the capital have been banned, with flights having been stopped to Canada as well.
The Prime Minister has also said this evening that any flights that can't maintain the highest degree of security will also be stopped, so that may suggest flights to the Middle East also being restricted. Experts this afternoon are already saying, well, this could happen this side of the Atlantic.
In terms of hijacked aircraft being flown into prominent buildings in a major capital, yes, after all, London is not ringed by surface-to-air missiles. We do not normally have fighter aircraft patrolling London skies. Theoretically, any hijacker who could hijack an aircraft in flight could then divert it into a major centre. London, Paris, Frankfurt, and we've seen this in Washington and New York.
So the message from the airlines is don't just turn up to the airport tomorrow. There are thousands of people still stranded here, scattered around the hotels around here. Ring up before you turn up or check the internet. Back to the studio.
Matt at Heathrow, thank you. And a recap now on today's devastating events in America. In New York City, 2 hijacked planes were flown into the World Trade Center. Both towers, each 110 stories high, collapsed. In Washington, D.C., a 3rd hijacked plane careered into the Pentagon. A 4th passenger jet crashed near Pittsburgh. The Foreign Office has issued an emergency number for anyone concerned about relatives in America. It's 020-7008-0000. That's 020-7008-0000. That's it from us. We'll be back with more news during GMTV. Good night.